Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional thought. Today we're on day 20 of the devotional Finding Free. And today we're talking about hearing voices. We're in part number 4 about allowing God to redirect our path, our dreams. And so as we do that, one of the things that we need to learn how to do is listen to God's voice. Listen to be able to know when God's redirecting us. So the question for us to get started off today is this: how good are you at following directions? Are you more of a visual learner that you have to see how something's done, or you have to read a book or read instructions? Do you have to watch a demonstration? Are you better at listening? Can you simply listen? You close your eyes and listen to what's being said? Or maybe for you, you have to write down what's being talked about in order for you to understand it, to be able to process through it. Maybe you have to talk about it and you really get a grasp of what something is by talking it through or even teaching it yourself. Or maybe for you, well, there are a group of people that it doesn't work, any of that doesn't work for, and those people are men. That's idea is that you have to be a hands-on learner. Well, it's not just men, period, but it's individuals across the board, both men and women, who are what we call kinesthetic learners, hands-on learners, where you have to actually do whatever it might be in order to be able to learn it. One of the things that sociologists have found doing surveys that sometimes people struggle in following directions. If you have too many directions, people get sidetracked. That's why people can remember usually anywhere between 5 to 7 steps. That's why, for instance, cell phone numbers are 7 digits. It's easy to remember. Anything more is too difficult. Anything less, well, it might not be enough steps to actually complete the job and do it well. But what they found was, when they surveyed, they found 3 different factors that played into why people struggle with directions. The first was, well, you might have guessed it, there's too many directions. There's just too much information for people to follow, and so they get off track. Number 2 is language difficulties and disorders. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe there's dyslexia involved. Maybe there's flipping around the concept from one way to another, and it's hard to understand. For instance, if I tell you put the green pencil in the red pencil case, you're going to really have a problem if you don't know what the colors red and green are, and you're really going to struggle to follow directions if you don't know what a pencil or a pencil case is. The other challenge with this thought is if you don't understand the concept of before and after, of when and then, or of if and then as well. To understand those concepts and to be sequential, to process through something, if you don't understand what that means, it's going to be really hard to follow directions or variations of those. And then last of all is social perspective. This is a little less classroom kind of oriented, more cultural. One of the things they found that people, they said, if you had an incentive like a reward or financial incentive, would you follow the directions better? And the response was no. Then they asked folks in the survey, well, if you were threatened with harm or punishment, would that motivate you to follow directions better? And the answer was no. And finally, they asked people, well, why? Why would you not want to follow the directions? And what they found was this: that people who found themselves to be entitled or to be the exception were the ones who felt they didn't have to follow the directions, that the directions or the instructions didn't apply to them. So how do we know if we're entitled or we feel we're the exception? Well, let me put it this way. I've been guilty of this, and maybe you have too. If you've ever seen a sign that says road closed, have you ever navigated around that sign just to check for yourself? Well, because it was off hours, it was the weekend, or maybe you didn't see anybody doing construction and thought in your mind, well, maybe they just left the signs up. I can't tell you how many times shortcuts turned into long cuts and big adventures because Dad decided to go ahead, I decided to go ahead and go around those road closed signs to my detriment. What we find when it comes to the instructions of trusting God, listening to Him, giving us guidance, that God is not running ahead of us, trying to drag us along. God is not necessarily even beside us, trying to force us or coax us into something. That Isaiah says that God, He's walking behind us, calling the shots and directing us, that we'll hear a voice behind us saying, listen to what Isaiah says. when he talks about these incredible words of encouragement. He says that it comes back to listening to a voice behind us saying, this is the way, walk in it, in Isaiah chapter 20, verse 20 and 21. And so as we hear that voice behind us saying, this is the way, walk in it, it gives us direction and encouragement. As God lays something on your heart, you won't always be able to shake it. And as things happen, you begin to hear God's voice louder and louder in your ear, encouraging you, this is the way that I want you to walk. Go in that path. For more encouragement to understand this concept better, check out Isaiah chapter 30, verses 20 and 21. Thanks so much for watching.